Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. Sitting here with my friend, Mr. Steve Genewick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to my house now. Well, not really my house, but it's sort of my house.
I was thinking that couch could actually be a bed.
It has been a number of times.
Wait, so we were just talking about where to start. I'd like to do a career retrospective.
Okay.
Like basically, where did you start and how did you get to be here at Capitol Studio C? I mean, that's quite a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. It happened quick, actually. Like most engineers, I was a horrible guitar player. Never going to be good enough to be in the band and didn't want to push speakers around, but still wanted, sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole 9 yards, right? So I figured, well, that guy's just standing there. I can do that. I'll be the sound guy. I mean, obviously, it's a little more difficult than that, but then I kind of got into it, and I was helping friends' bands and stuff like that, and decided like, no, there's something here. I'd seen pictures of recording studios, and that looks like fun. So I decided I wanted to do it, having no idea how to do it. Lucky for me, I grew up in LA. So especially LA in the late 80s, early 90s, there were literally hundreds of studios within 3 miles of where we're sitting now. So I actually found a school at the time. Now this is, we're talking 1989, 1990. And I started the program at the school. It was good for what it was. The schools now are much more advanced, but I was learning the basics.
What was the school?
It was called the Trebas Institute. Actually, one of my teachers was Bob Yosinski, was one of my teachers. So we had good teachers. And I was learning a lot. Again, the basics. This is what an EQ is. This is how a compressor works. This is signal flow, that kind of stuff. The stuff you can learn in a book. In one of my morning classes, the guy that sat next to me in the class, he got a job at Cherokee Studios. And he was the night runner at Cherokee. So he would work midnight to 8 a.m. and then he'd come to class. And then he'd go home, go to sleep, and And he came in one day, and we were actually in Bobby Osinski's class in the morning, I remember it. And he came in one day and he was telling me how he got fired. I was like, you got fired? He was like, yeah, I did something stupid. I did this. I said, so they're looking for somebody? And he went, probably you should go talk to them. I said, great. And I literally closed the book and got up and left, like walked out of class and walked over took my resume and walked into Cherokee and said, I know you need somebody, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, all right, can you come back in an hour for an interview? And I met with them there. And they were like, when can you start? And I was like, when do you need me? And they were like, can you be here at 4 for the afternoon shift? I said, yeah. So I started at Cherokee as the runner.
Same day?
Same day, yeah.
Nice.
Doing that, still going to school, eventually I then, you're there for a week, you learn where everything is, and then you become the night guy, the midnight to 8 a.m., cleaning up and doing all kinds of stuff. And it was fun. Cherokee was a great place. It was 5 rooms, so lots of bands, lots of assistants, like lots of stuff going on. It was a great first place to start because there was so much going on. But I realized I was still going to school, and I'm realizing that I'm learning way more at the studio than I am in the school. And school was kind of getting in the way of me being at the studio. So I actually never finished that program. It was a 2-year program. I think I did the first year. And then I was just at Cherokee, and I was there all the time. And eventually made my way up to assistant and all that. And then, like everybody who worked there, eventually got fired for whatever stupid thing.
You don't remember why you got fired?
I don't remember exactly.
Was it Bruce who fired you?
No, it wasn't Bruce. It was Joe who actually fired me. And I walked in, he was like, you know what's going to happen, right? I was like, yep, here's the pager, here's the keys. Like, sorry. Like, whatever. We left on good terms, so it was fine. And then I was working for another friend of mine doing like sound system installations and stuff and doing live sound for bands, local stuff, Molly Malone's, places like that, doing a little bit of touring and really liking live sound. And I did that for like a year or two. And then I was at Molly Malone's one night walking out, and my friend Bill Smith, who I worked with at Cherokee, still one of my best friends, he had left Cherokee and come here to Capitol, and he had been working here for about a year. And I was walking out of the bar, he was walking into the bar, and he was like, we need to talk right now. And sat down, he goes, somebody quit Capitol today. It's actually a guy I knew. He said, you should come get the job. I was like, man, I don't want to do the studio again. It was the hour. I'm having fun on the road. And he was like, and he sat me down and went, no, this is different. This is Capitol. And laid it out for me that night. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So went home, touched up the resume, came in the next day, walked in the front door, said, this is the guy I'm supposed to ask for. It was Michael Frondelli at the time. And Bill said, ask for Frondelli, came in, Michael came out. I said, I hear you're looking for somebody. Here's my resume. He said, how did you find out about this? Like, this happened yesterday. I said, well, I ran into Bill last night. He was like, wait here. He came down to Bill and went, who the hell's this guy? And he was like, he's good, hire him, and they needed somebody. So he came back up. He said, when can you start? And I was like, when do you need me to start? He said, 4:00. I said, okay. So I came back at 4:00 that day, and that was 27 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been here a little over 27 years.
What were the first jobs you did here at 27 years ago?
Here at Capitol?
Mm-hmm.
Here it's really cool because we don't have runners necessarily. We have our setup staff. So the setup staff here is responsible for setting up the live rooms. So, when a big session comes in or whatever, the setup staff they set up the chairs and the stands and hang the mics and plug everything in and do all that kind of stuff. And then the assistant, whoever the engineer is, takes care of setting up the control room. So I learned in the first couple days, it was, you're learning where everything is and, here's the mic locker and here's all this stuff. I remember distinctly the first thing I ever did by myself was a huge, what we call a 2-room session, because we have the 2 rooms that sit next to each other. So big orchestra, it was for Al Schmidt, who at the time I had never met. I had only been here like a week. And it was a huge Willie Nelson album, but big orchestra, big band, string. It took me like 9 hours to set up by myself.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, then came in the next morning. I think I set it up on like a Sunday and came in on the Monday for the session. That's the first time I met Al, and the first time I actually got to see like this big, huge thing with, Willie, and Jimmy Bowen was the producer, and Al Schmidt and all the music. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to something like that. And it was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, this is not making hip hop records in the back. This is the real deal. Like, he was right. This is a different kind of place. And then, yeah, I was on setup here. And at the time, we were doing lots of film dates, lots of scoring, lots of TV. So most of the sessions that went on here could not have one assistant. There were always 2 or 3 assistants. So because you were always running a DAT machine, or there was tapes to log, or a 2-track to run, or whatever it was. So because my friend Bill, who was Al Schmidt's assistant at the time, and then, the other guys that were here, at the time it was Charlie Picari and Leslie Ann Jones and Pete Dell. They were, and Bill Smith, they were the engineers. And so, I would assist for them. And then I got to know Al pretty well. Al and I hit it off over baseball and everything else. And so when they needed another person, Bill would just be like, well, you do it. Here, sit, so I got to hang out with them and do a lot of sessions. So even though...
Couldn't have both been fans of the same baseball team, so could you?
Al and I, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Because he was a Dodger fan from Brooklyn.
Oh, I see. See, I thought you were going to say, being a New Yorker, that he was a Yankees fan.
No, not at all. Al moved out the same year the Dodgers did. He didn't miss a season.
So he came with them?
He came with them. Yeah. Wow. So no, we were both huge Dodger fans.
Well, Eric's sitting over there. Look at the smile on his face. He's a Dodgers fan, so he's happy.
Yeah. Not this year, but last year was great. We'll see what next year brings. So we hit it off. So I was doing sessions with them. So technically I was on the setup staff here for like 5 years, but in reality I did it for like 2 years, and then I was doing sessions myself because we were so busy too. I mean, we were doing, in those 2 big rooms, we were doing 2 or 3 sessions a day in those rooms. Do a string date, 10 to 1, 2 to 5, knock it down, have another one up by 7, and we were doing that in each room. So it was really busy. It was really fun. And it just kind of rolled along. And then at some point, Bill was working with Al, and at some point, Bill had an opportunity to go off on his own, and he had a job, and to do the independent thing. And he came to me and said, "I'm going to quit today. I'm going to quit Al. So be ready." It's like, okay. And he went up and had a discussion with Al, and Al came down and said, "I guess you're it tomorrow." And I went, "Okay, fine." And that started a 20-year run with Al.
Guess you're it.
You're it. Tag, you're it. Yeah. Again, I had been working with those guys for a number of years at the time. So I knew the routine. I knew what he liked. I knew what he didn't like. So I had kind of already been doing it. And that coincided very closely with Pro Tools coming in. And when the HD systems came out and Pro Tools went to 96K, that's when Al decided it sounded good. and that he would start using it. So this transition from the other guys who had been so the job of being Al's assistant changed overnight, because suddenly I was not only Al's assistant, I had to be the Pro Tools operator, which means I had to learn it, first of all, because, again, none of us knew it when it first came out. We were still recording on tape and 3348s and D88s and all that stuff. So I not only had to learn Pro Tools, but then I had to learn how to bring it into this workflow with Al, which wasn't that hard because he was just use it as a tape machine anyways. But what it did is it kind of ingrained me more into his world. And because we got along and we would talk about baseball and golf and smoke cigars, and, you know, we became really good friends. And I just kept working with Al. And at that point, he kind of stopped working other places. He was working here, doing pretty much everything. We had rebuilt this room and he started mixing here. So he was here 6 days a week anyways. So I just stayed on staff at Capitol, even though I was working with Al all the time, to the point where I was giving my schedule to Paula, the studio manager, because Al and I were booked 6-8 months in advance. So I didn't get my schedule from Paula. I got it from Al. I mean, we would book vacations, like, okay, we're going to take vacation. We did that for 15 years, something like that.
Incredible.
And it was great. Yeah. I mean, I got to work with just about everybody I ever wanted to. I got to sit next to Al for 15 years and learn what he did and learn from him. And, you know, I used to tell people, you know, I went to mix with the masters every day of my life. I got to sit next to him. And also in that time, I was working with other people. You know, if Al wasn't working, I was, you know, working with Tommy Vicari or Jeff Emmerich or Glyn Johns sometime. You know, so I got to assist all those guys. Ed Cherney, you know, Elliot. I did a lot of records with Elliot Shiner. In here, Elliot would come mix here all the time. So I really got to see a lot of that kind of thing. And then over time, you know, you get your own clients too. So as Al's career was kind of slowing down a little bit, you know, mine was kind of ramping up. So it was just kind of a natural thing where I was getting busier. He wasn't getting busier kind of by choice because, you know, he just didn't want to do a lot of the projects anymore. So when he needed something, I would do it, and I was here. But yeah, it kind of naturally just, you know, my career was going this way and his was winding down, and it worked out great. So now here we are, still here. I'm still on staff at Capitol because there's no reason to leave. So they're great about it here too. If I have to go do something somewhere else, they let me do it. You know, I have a mix room at my house, so if I want to mix at home, that's okay. If, you know, when Al and I would travel, it was like, hey, Alan, we got to go to London and do a record. They'd be like, okay, fine. We'll see you when you get back. You know, so it was all the advantages of being an independent engineer, but, you know, with health benefits and a 401k and a weekly paycheck. Yeah.
Wow.
And not a bad place to work, you know.
Kind of envious now. I'm just thinking, wait there, did I do this wrong? I was sort of...
Believe it or not, it kind of worked out because, you know, there was that, you know, the financial crisis and, you know, the late 2000s and stuff. And I just kind of rode through it because Al and I were working and I just stayed here. So I had a lot of friends that struggled at that time, you know, work was leaving and this and that. And I just kind of cruised through the whole thing, which was great. So, that's incredible. I don't know what I do now, but I just show up to work every day.
Now, you, dare I say, are, you know, one of the first people to mix music in Atmos?
Yes, as far as I know, yeah.
And we're obviously sitting in Studio C, which is one of the first rooms to be used for mixing music?
I think it was the first room that was kind of purposely built for music only. We can do films in here. We haven't, but the tools are the same. But yeah, it was one of those strange things where I literally got called into the office one day and they said, we're going to tear down Studio C, you know, we're going to tear the walls out and we're going to build a Dolby Atmos room. I said, okay, why are we doing that? And they were like, we're not really sure, but the record company wants us to do it. They said they have lots of work for us and they're giving us a lot of money to do it. And Dolby's one of the partners. So we're going to take the room down. We're going to put this system in. And when it's in, there's a record that has to be done by this date. We should be done with the room by this date, which was like a month before. So when we're done with the room, you have to mix the record in Dolby Atmos. And I said, okay, is anybody going to be here to show? We'll teach you how to use the tools, but yeah, have fun.
What was the record?
It was REM, Automatic for the People.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah.
So basically, we built the room. It came out great. All the Dolby guys were here. Kerry was here. Nate Kunkel at the time worked for Dolby. He was very much involved in building this room and putting it together. And, the day we turned the speakers on and they calibrated everything, and the next day they sat me down and went, okay, here's the render, and you do this and this and this, and you can move the object this way, and you can do stuff this way. Call us if you have a problem. And everybody left. And I had a record to do and to figure out, basically. The band's coming in 2 weeks, is what I was told. So I just had to figure it out. And it was
What year was
fun.
this?
This was 2016, I think. Maybe 2017. And we were still buzzing out the room. I was still finding the little problems you have when you build a room. Oh, I got a buzz here, and I'm not sure that's working right. That kind of stuff. So we were still doing that. So like Nate would come by in the mornings, and we'd have coffee, and he'd be like, "How's everything working out? Is everything?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I got stuck on this thing where what do you do with the bass when you do?" And he'd look at me and go, "I don't know, man. You're the only one that's ever done this, so figure it out." Thanks. Because again, it had been used for movies, but nobody had ever done it for music only. And I remember literally asking the first question. I was like, "So like, do I have to worry like in 5.1 you didn't want to put too much in the back because you never knew what people had, and in films it's ambience here. Like what are the rules here?" And they were like, "No, you got full range speakers everywhere. And the way the system works, it'll steer stuff wherever you want it. So, you really don't have that much limitations." And I was like, and I remember literally asking, I was like, "So I can put anything I want anywhere in this room?" And they went, "Yeah." I said, "I can fill the room with sound." And they went, "Yeah, if you want to." And that's what stuck in my head. Like, I can fill this room with sound. I have all these speakers, and I'm not doing a little bit of ambience. Like, if we're going to do this, let's do it. Let's go for it. So I figured out a way to, there was things I had to figure out how to, like, if I wanted something to stay somewhere, I had to figure out how to anchor it there, but still fill the room, that kind of stuff. So it was really fun. And literally for 2 weeks, people would pop in and see what was going on and this and that. And I ended up mixing the whole record. And then the idea was Scott Litt, who produced the original record, was going to come in and we were going to tweak the mixes, and then the band was going to come in. And it became very clear really fast that Scott and I had a completely different idea of what this was supposed to be. And neither one of us was wrong. It was just very clear, like, okay, he doesn't like this, what I did. So basically, I just went, we worked on it for a while, and I kind of went, Scott, this, like, instead of using let's just start over. And he was like, yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. Like, this will go quicker if we just start over. So we ended up just kind of starting over. And at some point, we ran long, and I had to go do a project with Al. So they actually ended up finishing that record. So the record that's out now are actually not my mixes. They're very good mixes, but again, they had a different conceptual idea. But I still liked my idea. So when they were done, I was back on it. And for the first couple of years, we knew that Universal had to deal with Dolby, and we knew that something was coming. But at the time, this music wasn't being released. This was the only place I could really listen to it, unless I went to the Dolby Theater across the street, if they would let me in. There was no home stuff. There was no,
There's no title.
There was no title. There was no Amazon. Eventually, it was Amazon that was the deal, but we didn't know that at the time. So they were like, just mix. So sometimes they would give me songs to mix. Other times it was like, hey, I just did this cool record. They were like, great, do it. Mix it. So if I thought something was cool, I would just grab it and mix it. And it was really
Find some
fun.
cool stuff and give it to Steve to mix.
Exactly. It was that kind of thing. And of course everybody was like, when are you going to do Queen? When are you going to do, and I was like, I don't want to do that stuff. I want to do like it was actually a very conscious, because Queen came up immediately, because I had worked on the 5.1 mixes with Elliot Shiner. And everybody, so they were like, you can do the Queen stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do the Queen stuff.
So did Elliot do the Queen stuff?
Yes.
All of it?
Yeah, we did a night at the opera in here, actually.
Did Brian come down for it?
Yeah, he was here for weeks. Yeah,
we could have hours.
Really fun.
Yeah.
Really fun. Yeah, Brian's a great guy. There's hours of stories about that record.
There's lots of people watching going, what's going to happen next? So they're going to talk about Queen only because it's Warren? Everybody.
I'll tell you a funny story, but really quick.
Please.
we were mixing one of the songs, and Brian says, "There's 2 guitar parts missing." And we were like, man, we've been through this like with a fine, like, are you sure? Like, we went through this with a fine tooth. He says, "They're not on the record, but I remember doing them. I'll bet you they're there. They didn't fit." So we went back to the tapes, and I was like, "There's 2 guitar parts here that we're not using." And he was like, "Let me hear them." And put on. He goes, "Yep, those are the 2. Put them in." We're like, "But they're not on the original record." He goes, "Nope, we didn't have room for them, but now we got plenty of room. Let's put them in." So there's parts on the 5/1 version of A Night at the Opera that are not on the original record.
Wow.
We never would have made that call ourselves. But when Brian said to do it, we did it.
Of course.
Yeah.
What about, because you did open the can of worms,
Mhm.
is there a plan to do the Atmos version of it?
I believe that they're either being done or going to be done, but Brian will do them in England.
Right.
Yeah. He's got his own studio there and his own engineers, and they're great guys. So yeah, that's where it should be done. So I mean, I'm of the opinion that if you can get the original people to do these records, that they should do them.
Sure. Yeah.
100%. If they don't want to do them, I'll take a crack at it. But they should do them themselves.
I think the 2 bands I always hear are Queen and Steely Dan. That's the other one everybody asks about.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing about Steely Dan. I'm sure Elliot will do them at some point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah. But Queen, I remember having the discussion about Queen, and I was like, "Guys, I don't think we should do those records yet. Like, we've been doing this for like 3 months. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody's heard it. We don't even know how this is going to get played. Like, maybe we don't completely screw up Bohemian Rhapsody in the first 3 months. Like, let's just put that one aside and wait till we, let's not even talk about Dark Side of the Moon. And let's get some of this stuff under our belt and figure out what the hell we're doing first." And everybody kind of went, "Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea." So, so we were taking, other stuff and playing with that. Some of it came out really great. There's some stuff that we actually did in Atmos that, like, it became a bigger deal because of the Atmos mix than it actually was in stereo. So
What do you think is a good example of that?
So there was a record we did in stereo, and I don't think the record even came out in stereo. It was a record they did in England with the Def Jam label. So they took all these old hip hop tracks and put all this orchestration around them. And I had done some of the first string sessions here for that record. So I knew about the record. And when I started doing this, I was like, "Ooh, that would be really cool. Like, all the big orchestra, with this hip hop stuff, that would be really fun." So I took LL Cool J's "Mama Said Knock You Out," and I thought it had a lot of sound effects, and I said, that would be fun. So I came in one Saturday by myself, and I just did it. I was like, I got a thing to mix on Saturday. They were like, "All right, have fun." And I did it, and it came out really well. And I was like, "Wow, this is sounding pretty cool." And I brought Chris Walden, who has a room upstairs, and he did a bunch of that record. I brought him down, like, "What do you think of this?" He was like, "This is kind of amazing." And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty fun, huh?" The record spins around, and there's gunshots, and I brought somebody else, and I was like, "What do you think of this?" And they were like, "This is really cool." So like that next Monday, I brought the record company people in, the Dolby people were here because they were always here at the time. And I was like, "What do you guys think of this?" And it was just like dead silence in the room. Like, people couldn't believe how crazy it was, but it actually worked. And from then on, it was like, all right, all bets are off. Like, this is...
I remember hearing it.
This is nuts. And this is like, yeah, we got to do that.
Yeah, I remember hearing it. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. And it lent itself to it.
Yep.
It was, I did like 4 or 5 songs.
In this room is where
record.
I heard it, by the way.
Yeah. At the time, this was the only place you could hear it.
Yeah, I remember.
And so that's what, like, when we would do demos, we always start with Rocket Man, because that works the best. And we would always end with LL Cool J.
Beach Boys in the middle?
Beach Boys in the middle, yeah. And then we did the Beach Boys track. It was the same kind of thing. It was a record they had done in England again with orchestration around the Beach Boys. And I figured, that one would be fun because then I can get a Beach Boys track, but I don't have to remix the original record and get the Beach Boys police on my ass, So, plus I had this big orchestra to work with. And at the time, again, my whole thought still is like, fill the space. So sometimes these old records, they're not as much fun because they're, 8 tracks. Like, there's not a lot of stuff
4
on
tracks.
them, 4 tracks sometimes. I mean, you can peel stuff apart, and there's ways to do it. I mean, obviously, stuff like Kind of Blue and stuff like that, which is a whole nother discussion. So you can do it, but sometimes it's not as much fun. I actually have a lot more fun working on new records. Now the stuff that they're sending us now to do, almost everything we're doing now is frontline new releases, which is great. Yeah, which is really great. So we've gone from me by myself in this room kind of doing whatever I had laying around to 5 engineers here, three engineers in Nashville, a couple in London. I mean, we've got 2 rooms here, we've got 2 rooms in Nashville, building rooms in New York, building rooms in Santa Monica. I mean, we got people mixing Atmos all over. I have my house still, during COVID, I set up an Atmos room in my living room, and that's still up and running. So, I mean, we're cranking out Atmos mixes, which is really fun.
All the systems that you work on, PMC?
Yes. Let me think. Yes. There's one room that we use for playbacks in Santa Monica that's ATCs. The great thing about Atmos, I mean, it's kind of agnostic to all that. You can use whatever speakers you like. We have a partnership with PMC here at Capitol, and we had before all this Atmos stuff came up. And we have a great relationship with them, and obviously Maurice is a great friend, and we've traveled around the world together doing this stuff. So, and I love the PMC speakers; they're great. So most of the rooms that we build are PMC speakers, and a lot of that is based around the people and not necessarily the speakers. The speakers are great, but the people are better.
Sure.
Because we don't just buy the speakers from them; they help us with them. Maurice comes in and helps us install, and he's here if something breaks. They're here the next day.
No, we've often thought that he's been cloned.
Yes,
because he seems to be in 8 places at once.
Everywhere, yeah,
and seems to be running every single facet of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
From selling it to seemingly
using it
to help design the rooms.
Yeah, I don't know how he does. Once in a while, I'll call him and I'll hear the European ring. Be like, oh crap, he's in Europe. Like, when the hell did he go there? But he'll answer the phone. What do you need? What do you need? Oh man, we blew a tweeter. Oh, somebody will be there tomorrow. Okay, somebody's here tomorrow. It's great. So that's amazing. They've been a great partner for us.
So let's talk about the room. Capital C. There you go, done. Okay, right. Monitor controller over at PMC studio. Was it the same thing? Is it the same thing?
No. So this room in Atmos, because this is one of the earlier rooms, we didn't have all the Dante implementation.
Ah, I see. So
the monitor in this room, we had the unique situation where we wanted to still be able to work on the analog console. So for Atmos, this is a 3-computer system. We have a playback rig, a print rig, and then the renderer on a 3rd computer, which up until recently was an old a PC that Dolby had given us. Now we're running it on a Mac Mini. So we have 3 computers in this room. In this room, it runs Maddie from one computer to the print rig, and then Dante from the print rig into the renderer. Again, because at the time, we had to do it that way. And we have a Crestron system here that handles all of the monitoring. But also the cool thing about this Crestron system, and this is one that Nate Kunkel set up, is we can completely bypass the Atmos system. So when I hit that button, all of that is bypassed, and we go right back to the analog console, which today is turned off, but because we've been doing so much Atmos work in here that we just shut the Neve off. But so that bypasses the entire system. So if you wanted to mix in here in stereo, you hit that button, you move these out of the way, you're an analog console mixing in stereo. If you want to mix in 5.1, you can go to the console. This is now the 5.1 outputs of the console. If I go to patch 5.1 or patch 7.1, I have patch points over here that I can patch straight out of Pro Tools into the monitor system, or I can go right back to Dolby Atmos. It's pretty ingenious system. The newer rooms that we're building, and like the room at Lemon Tree, they just do the 1 or 2 things. We can do stereo, or we can do Atmos, but they're not quite. We don't have the analog console issue in those other rooms. The original idea was that we would be able to use the analog console to mix. If you wanted to, you could put the analog console in the signal path to do Atmos. And I did it once, and it was such a huge pain in the ass that we never did it again, and we changed it so that now it doesn't do that. So it's a much slicker digital system now.
You changed quickly, so I presume there was no massive benefit that made you want to stay. Oh, well. Things that would be disguised in a pair of speakers, because everything's layered, so those little buzzes and stuff that we're used to are okay in the stereo world, but suddenly when there's an acoustic guitar over there that had a buzz on the microphone that was barely audible, now it's going
Right. Or what I was finding is, buzzes in the patch bay,
Right.
or
Introduced. I see.
or a channel on a Neve console that suddenly, that EQ has a little bit of buzz in it. And like you said, it's over there by itself. And suddenly you hear it. And because in Atmos, you have to do all the panning in the box anyways, because it goes into the render with the objects and stuff. So really all this was doing was it was giving faders. And if you wanted, you got the Neve sound, but it didn't bias anything. And at the time, it reduced us to 64 objects. And we were like, you know what? Nobody's ever going to do this, and I'd rather have more objects. So so then we rehashed the room and took the analog console out of the Atmos system completely. But if you still want to mix stereo in here, again, you hit the button, you move this away, and it's just good old Studio C the way it used to be. Actually, the tape that's on it still, this is Al's last mix.
Oh, wow, really? Is this your handwriting?
No, that's actually Chandler's handwriting. I didn't do that particular record with him.
What was the last mix Al did in here?
It was a duet with Willie Nelson and Diana Krall.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah. But we've just left the tape on because
I think
nobody wants to take it off.
I wouldn't either.
So, again, it's still a great stereo room. It always was and it still is. So you just bypass all these speakers and it's great.
So talking speakers, there's a schnizzle ton of them, like 20.
We got a lot of them, 20 speakers in this room. We've got obviously the 3 PMCs in the front with the XBDs and the point one, the sub cabs. There's actually 4 cabinets in this room that make up the point one, just because it's a fairly big room. So we started with 2 and we needed more, we just wanted to efficiently fill the low end. So we added 2 more. And then, so up top, we have the wafers here. They're on trusses because when we built the room, there are 2 competing systems. There's Dolby Atmos and there's Oro 3D. And the Oro 3D spec is actually speakers over the front speakers. So you have speakers here and speakers here. So we put this trussing system in because if we ever want to do Oro 3D, the trusses move. So we can take this set of speakers and push it forward and take these and move them here. We've never done it, but we could do it. That's why we have the trussing system. Nice. Works great. And the video guys love it because they can hang their lights on.
We didn't think about that, Eric.
Yeah. I think after being in here a while, I think at some point we're going to try to raise the the ceiling speakers up a little bit. Just because these get a little close to you when you're standing up. But that's as high as we could go because the top slant in the ceiling, that's as high as we could go with them. But since we're not really doing Aura 3D, when the next time this room gets rejigged will probably be when the analog console goes away, which again, it just doesn't get used all that much anymore. So if anybody wants to buy an 88R.
Does this tie to a tracking room?
It can, but it doesn't.
You've never tracked using this console?
No, we have a brand new 88R in A and we have the greatest 8068 in B.
Yeah.
So we don't have to use this console. No, I don't. I mean, other than maybe a vocal or keyboard, these preamps have probably never been used. Not here, at least. We bought this console about 8 years ago and we bought it used. It was at a studio in England.
What was in it before?
When VR.
Oh, it was a VR.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at it when I came in the room, I'm like, this looks like the room that I mixed with Owen, but that doesn't look like the Neve.
Yeah.
And that's why.
At the time, it was probably, it definitely was a VR.
It was 2011, yeah. 2011, 2012. Right?
Yeah, we put the 88R, we put a brand new one that we spec'd in A in 2011, December of 2011. And then this one came in a couple of years later. It's just a great console. I mean, I love the 88R. It's a fantastic console. It's just completely impractical at this point, So right now it just holds up the dock and the S.
Just this is more of a me wanting to know why did you guys change from the VR to the 88R?
That VR we had tons of miles on it. We had recapped it a few times. This was just a more modern, at the time, a more modern console. It was getting tough for, we have great maintenance guys, but they were working on that console a lot. And this one came up and it was like, yeah, let's do it. So, and it matches the one in A. So, we do have times where we can start a project in A and bring it over here. The automation matches and all that kind of stuff. So it does make it practical for us to have the same console in both rooms. At one point, we had 4 Neves in the building. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
2 old ones and 2 new ones.
Do you think that this is, obviously this room's going to carry on being an immersive audio room, a Dolby Atmos room. What do you think is going to happen? Just something in here that's maybe good enough to do vocals and overdubs?
Oh, this will probably, my guess, I mean, what we've been talking about is this will become a big S6.
Right.
Yeah, we have one on the 2nd floor, and actually we designed our own frame for it, so it kind of tilts up. So when you sit at the S6, you can actually see everything, but the buttons are literally like right in front of you. It's really cool. So we'll probably have one of those and bring it down here, because we still do a significant amount of films in this room. They mix film scores all the time. They don't always use the Atmos system, but they'll do them in 7.1 or 5.1. And on those film scores, you know, the track counts are so high on those that it's the analog console it's kind of impractical for them too. Some guys might run some stuff through the console, but you know, it's 72 channels, which sounds like a lot unless you have 1,000 tracks in your movie score. So yeah, at some point this will leave and this will become an all digital room. It's just the sign of the times. We still have 2 analog rooms. You can still come and mix analog.
Yeah.
You know,
And you got all that tracking, all that beautiful tracking.
Exactly.
So 3 at the front here.
3 in the front, big PMCs with the extended XPD cabinets on the bottom.
So are these like resonator cabinets?
No, those are the same as they have at Lemon Tree. So it's just it extends the bottom end.
Right.
In this room, when you flip to Atmos, when you're mixing Atmos, some of the XPD cabinets, the lower cabinets on the left and right, do some bass management for the small speakers also.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So you get a little more low end out of the small speakers.
Right.
And in this room, we use the wafers as our small speakers. So these are the 6 overhead. And then the exact same speakers are in the walls also.
And there's another 6, 3,
so
and
there's
3?
3 on this side, 3 on this side, and 4 across the back of it.
And the 3 are lined up perfectly with these 3?
Yeah. So the way we do it here at our studios is the back wall has 4 speakers. One of them's lined up with this tweeter. One of them's lined up with this tweeter. Same on that side. And then here, so there's a speaker here lined up, another one here, and another. So they line up to those. So it's pretty symmetrical.
It was really interesting because Brigitte, who's holding the camera over here, hadn't heard Rocket Man in a room that it was mixed in. So I was like, come and have that experience. And you and I sat on the couch back there. It's really interesting. I've never done that before. I've only heard Atmos in the sort of ideal place. Right. There's been a couple of times I've sat maybe a little bit back, but usually I'm in this general vicinity. And hearing it back there, it was like the ambience of everything, like the vocal ambience at the beginning.
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, a fun part about Atmos is you can experience it different depending on where you're sitting. I sit back here all the time. I don't know why I picked that spot. I'll do a mix and I'll just sit back there and listen to it. You know, that seems to be the spot for me. But sometimes I'll go stand in the back corner and make sure sometimes it's making sure there's nothing weird coming out back there, like the one dry vocal or something like that. You kind of want to stay open. You know, singers don't like it when you put their vocal really dry in one speaker. So I'll be sometimes looking for that. The other thing, when I first did that first REM record I was doing, and again, my goal was to fill the room. So I took the vocal and I started spilling it into speakers because I wanted it to fill the room. And I spend a lot of time, especially this room because it's so big, I'll spend a lot of time walking around. So I'll walk, and I was walking around the room and realizing that Michael Stipe was following me wherever I went. He was like right there all the time. And I was like, okay, this is kind of creepy. Like, so I have to figure out a way to anchor stuff. So I figured out a way to anchor him to still have the vocal fill the room, but anchor it up here because that's where I want it.
That's an interesting question. I'd love to have that answered because to quickly say this, and I've said it before on camera, one of the things I always hated about 5.1 was everybody who mixed in 5.1 put the vocal in the middle of the there, and then filled the room with music and ambience. And the vocal always ended up sounding like, hi there, I'm the vocal. Right. Where the great thing about stereo is like the vocals coming middle, sides, everything at you at the same time. Obvious thing to say. And I've always felt like that was a terrible thing with 5.1. So how, in an object-based world, how does it work? You put it in there and then you can just choose to spread it so it
can.
How do you do it?
I do it the opposite way.
Okay.
I have zones set up
Yeah.
So I have two objects that live front left and front right.
Yeah.
And I have two objects that basically my zones,
Yeah.
which we talked about in another video, follow the speakers in this room. Because this is the room I was in when I came up with the zones.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically my zones are where the speakers are. So I'll take, and because of the way I do it, I can steer that vocal into different sets of speakers, different objects. So I'll start with front, left, and right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have an object to the center. So I'll take a send and I'll start dialing it into the center just to bring it out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll start dialing it into the sides just to bring it forward a little bit, and then a little more on the sides here. And then I also discovered, I love height. So I'll take it and I'll bleed it into these two speakers too, which kind of gives it this presence, kind of gives it this thing to come off the wall. So I can control, and that's how I figured out how to anchor stuff. Because like, if I want it more anchored in the front, I might add more to the center speaker. But I like phantom center too. It just sounds natural to me. So I do have stuff coming out of the center, and it's, kick and snare and vocal. I mean, I use the center speaker, but I use it sparingly. If you were to mute the center speaker in my mix, the vocal does not go away.
Good.
The bass does not go away. It's all still there.
Yeah.
One thing I caution people all the time is the subs too. There's two things about the LFE channel. Always filter it yourself, because you don't want to trust, especially consumer playback systems. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. And always make sure that the LFE is an extension of what you have going on, not the only thing. So if you mute the LFE channel, your bass should not go away. It should be everywhere. And that's just supplementing, it's low end.
Do you have a good understanding of like, say for instance here, the wafers, these are wafers in the wall, yes, as well? Okay, so the majority of speakers in this room then are wafers. Mm-hmm. So where do they kind of high pass at? Where do they disappear on the low end?
I think it's around 150-ish. But then they're doing, again, we have a little bit of bass management going on.
Yeah.
Actually, I think they're lower than 150. I've never really noticed like an appreciable, I mean, obviously I'm not throwing a kick drum into that thing and expecting it to be that.
Right.
But the one nice thing about using the same, especially the same brand of speaker, and PMC is very good at this, is all their speakers have the same kind of character. Right. So if you were to turn on just the wafer or just the big guys over here, obviously they sound different, but the character is fairly similar. Mm-hmm. So as you move stuff through the room, it's not like you're changing dramatically. You're not going from a PMC to an NS10 to a Genelec, which are, so having that consistency really helps. Yeah, I've never run into a problem with thinking stuff was too. Again, I'm not throwing real low end bass stuff, and I'm not putting timpanis in the back necessarily. I'm probably gonna even if I could in this room, the consumer system is probably not gonna like that, because not all consumer systems are built the same. At home, I have a Sonos soundbar. The speakers in the back are this big.
Sure.
I mean, they do a really good job. They sound really good, but I probably don't want all my timpani back there. So we do think about that kind of stuff. And again, I'm trying to anchor stuff where I want the focus to be too. I go back to that thing where Michael Stipe was following me around the room and it was really creepy. About a year after that, I was mixing a Marilyn Manson record. And I thought,
it to be like that.
Wow. So I put his vocal in every single speaker equally. So as you walk around the room, he follows you, and it's really creepy. For that song, it really works. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
So it sounds like you're basically in the box entirely. Is there any breakout for hardware ever?
There can be. In this room, there can be. We have one 16 IO hooked up to the Atmos system.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to, you could insert analog stuff.
Do you ever?
The only time, there have been a couple of occasions where I did use chambers.
Right.
But that was very specific stuff. And again, that's something I can only do here. I can't repeat it anywhere else.
So you print it, presumably?
I printed it, yeah. And then when we do the reamping that we do, obviously we need analog inputs because we have to capture the microphones. So we do have an analog scheme. If there was something, if you're doing a catalog album and there's, you needed that specific sound.
Sure.
Makes sense. You run into the closet and you grab the AMS and you get that or whatever, the Fairchild or the, I mean, we have, the great thing about Capitol, we have all that stuff. Even as we go more digital, we still have it. We very rarely get rid of anything. So.
Yeah. There's probably going to be a point of diminishing returns where some of the stuff, especially old digital, is not even going to be worth selling. No. Why sell it? Exactly. Keep it for that one time you need it. It just paid for itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you, like, you know, there was an instance, you know, again, through the 80s and 90s, every room had 20 channels of drummer gates because you needed them on everything. So we had, 40 drummer gates. We got rid of a third of them. Yeah. So we kept a few around, but and we'll trade them for
You had 40 gates, you got rid of 41 of them.
Exactly. So
I've got to ask, the Capital valve compressor.
Pretty cool, huh? They were built by Ian Sheftick, who was on staff here at the time, who does Magic Death Eye. That's his company. So these are essentially the early Magic Death Eye compressors. And it's a stereo compressor with step pots because it was built for mastering. And then when the mastering department was eliminated a year ago, unfortunately, about a month ago, we went to the shop and somebody was like, actually, we took something out of here. I can't remember what we took out of the rack, but we were like, we got to fill it with something. One of the guys came down and went, oh, we should put one of these in. And I was like, oh, we have those things. So now we actually have one in every room because we have 3 of them. There's only 3 that exist. There's one in every room. And believe it or not, we've all started using them. They sound great. Sure I've used them on stereo bus. I've used them on bass. I've used them on piano. I haven't used it on a vocal yet. I have to try it.
So these are essentially the same as what compressor was made afterwards?
The Magic Death Eye.
I don't know the Magic Death Eye.
Is Ian Sheftick, who was a mastering engineer here. Yeah. He builds them. It's a kind of a boutique-y compressor. There's a plug-in version of it, but he builds the hardware too. So if you're familiar with Magic Death Eye.
I'm not, but I'm going to be.
Yeah, these are kind of the prototype. Obviously, he built it for us when he worked here. So yeah, they're great. I love it.
I didn't realize it was. I've been in this room multiple different times, and I thought I was in 2 different rooms.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, the room changed quite a bit. So had nothing to do with Atmos, but when we put this console in, we redid the room. So we got a new credenza. There used to be racks all along here, hanging up, because we had tons of gear. Yeah, it was a mixed room.
Because Al had his vocal compressor over here.
Exactly. There was a shelf there. There were racks up here, racks down here. There was a producer's assistant engineer desk here. The patch bay was down here, kind of on the floor. Yeah, but as things progressed, we one thing about Capitol, we can't get more space. So in order to make this room bigger, we just started taking stuff out of it. So it was like, you know what? We don't need all this stuff anymore. Half the stuff we're doing is in the box anyways. Let's get rid of all these cabinets. So we got rid of tons of rack space and all that kind of stuff. So effectively made the room bigger that way. And that's what we'll probably do again. How do we make this room bigger? Easy. Get these things out of here.
Get this big thing out of the way. What's this thing do?
Exactly. And
I see. It's your headphone stand.
Exactly. People would come in and put laptops on top of it.
Once again, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Marvelous.
My pleasure.
Please leave any comments and questions below. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, adio. Goodbye. Tschüss.